All right. We're going to get started here in a few minutes, not seconds, sorry. In a few minutes, and just checking audio levels now. So I'll be on in about 3 minutes, and just wanted to see if you guys can hear me all right. So go ahead and let me know in the chats over on YouTube, and then in the other stream that is going on separately here. Okay, let's go ahead and bring the music down. And we're going to get this rolling in just a moment here. Just got to click a few more buttons. Monday. All right. Let's go ahead and get this set up over here. All right, let's get this rolling. Oh, wrong button. Let's try that again. Let's try this one more time. Well, I'll say hi to you guys. Hi, Spin. Hi, No Name. Hello, Mr. Dr. Pepper. I'm glad to hear that you are sitting next to Mr. No Name. This is a good development, and I look forward to hearing back about how today goes. Hi, JR. Hello, Bobby. And I see that there's a few others on the YouTube side. They just haven't chatted yet. For those of you guys in the other stream, hello. I see you guys piling in there. I am going to get started, though, so go ahead and put your questions in the chats, both on YouTube and on the other stream chat over there. For you guys that cannot log into YouTube just yet. I hear that you'll be able to, specifically for my streams only going forward, if I can actually give you a schedule. So we'll see if I can do that. But yes, let's go ahead and get this started. Hello and welcome to Macro Mondays here on Landy's Crypto Corner. Today is August 14th, 2023, and we are going to take a look at Bitcoin on the higher term timeframes and weave that into our daily analysis. We'll also take a look at traditional markets, and we might look at bonds, Dixie, gold, and then we'll take a look at some altcoins. If you do have any questions, as this is being live streamed currently, go ahead and put your questions in the chat, and at the end of the stream I will scroll back up and take a look through them and try to answer those for you. This part is being recorded for those of you that cannot watch live. You will be able to watch this later without having to scrub through everything. All right, so Bitcoin on the daily here, pretty pretty quiet actually. I do know that we saw a nice move up to the upper second standard deviation of the Bollinger Bands here, just under 29,700 in the early goings of today's trading. And, kind of to be expected after spiking that lower first at around $29,000. What did this actually get to? The low came in actually at around $29,072 here on spot, and then moved right through the overhead resistance here at 29.425 and headed up to just under 29.7. Now, as I had mentioned in yesterday's Bitcoin in 60 seconds video for today's price action, that I was looking for, after that lower first got tagged, for things to head up somewhere around the basis around 29,300 to the overhead resistance at 29.5, and if it did push up through there, to head up to around 29.7, and that is what we have seen so far. And Bitcoin consolidating around the basis band here is, neutral. This is neither a bullish nor bearish setup currently. If we do see closures above the upper second, I would be looking at this as a higher low, and as soon as it being Bitcoin, can take out the close open structure here at around 29,800, then I would look for it to run the wick high at just under 30,300, where this weekly support is coming in. And if it could reclaim that area, then we're really looking right back into the mid $30,000 area to 31, and eventually 31.5 and up to the current wick high of the range above at around 31.8. That would also open the door for a run at that daily overhead resistance just above it at 32.4. Now, if Bitcoin does lose the lower second standard deviation at just under $29,000 and then proceeds to drop this wick low at around 28,850 to 28.8, I would be looking for things to, head down to this daily support at 28.426. Possibly open up that weekly at 28K. And I do kind of think that things may, in fact, head down further, but we would have to evaluate after a big support like a weekly gets hit, as it is possible that it gets a nice bounce from there. But if that did fail, then we're looking at 27.5 to 27.250 at these dailies. And there's that weekly support just below at 26.750. And there's dailies in here all around that 27K region. So a pretty logical place to be looking if things did fall right through this support zone. Although, Bitcoin's had plenty of chances to head into that area, and it's only just tapped on the daily support just above at around that 28, 4 to 5 area. So, it's bears are not showing strength. Bulls are not really showing much strength either. Even if we did see a reclaim of 30,300, need to see those wicks reclaimed at, that 30,400 to basically 30,500, and that's still, I don't think Bitcoin would be quite out of the woods in terms of, pullbacks and wider pullbacks at that. But if it did get above there, we would start to see the etchings of a low set on the weekly as well. So keep this in mind. If we do see dailies above that overhead resistance at 30,300, and then a weekly that closes above there, that would be above the upper first standard deviation at around 30,125 currently, above overhead resistance that was initially bought back as support after being lost and then rejected over here. That would paint a low on the weekly off the basis band. We'd be looking for things to eventually trade up to around the upper second standard deviation, which is coming in at 31.5. Most likely we'd see expansion up into that overhead resistance, that really big area at the daily, weekly, monthly level at 31.8, and then maybe more if it can get above there and close above there. As it stands right now, to the downside, that lower first on the weekly is right there at that 27,250 daily support area. And we see the lower second coming in all the way down here just below the close open on the weekly of this last major low. And that's coming in at 25,800. So just below that 26K closing low structure. And this is going to be, pretty interesting to watch throughout the rest of August coming into September, as we do have, ETF news filings, right? It's news driven events that can have a real impact on the market. I do believe that just like what we saw with the ARK ETF postponement, where the SEC is just asking them to, fill out some more paperwork, basically, defining exactly what they want to do. We haven't quite, I don't know if anybody's aggregated exactly what the SEC is looking for from them. But then, of course, we've got BlackRock and a few others that are coming up. Postponements, I don't think, are going to do much to price action. Approvals will most likely, pump price, as it would be exciting. And then, rejections of their applications would probably degrade price quite a bit. And then we can start maybe targeting some of those big areas to the downside. As it stands right now, things are in a neutral position. As I just pointed out, not too much to make of it until we see, something bigger happen here, especially on the daily. We got really low levels of volatility on the weekly here. We've got a 3.57 and the for BBWP volatility, and the moving average is still chasing at around 6. It's at the 6% region. So what does that mean? Not too much right now is what that means. It means likely a little bit more waiting, as we do see, Bitcoin's been consolidating for quite some time. We want to see, stronger moves, with BBWP getting up over the moving average then confirming that stronger move. And that would also be, BBWP pointed up, moving average also pointed up. That would be your confirmation for volatility, that it is starting to kick off. Now, the last little volatility uptick was just on this move back up to run that daily, weekly, monthly overhead resistance at 31.8. And of course, first pass rejection was completely expected. We talked about this quite a bit prior to that move. We can also see that, as it stands right now, the Stochastic momentum pivot is turned down. This, to me, does not mean much. We can also see that the pivot is at that weekly overhead resistance at 30,300. So closures above there on the weekly would turn Stochastic back to the upside. That's an initial cross even. Wow, I had a tough time saying that. That would be an initial cross, not a confirmation until we see the close after, and close above the pivot, or the new pivot in that case, which most likely would head down to, the low side structure somewhere around the, $29,000 region would be my expectation for that. That's really only going to happen above the upper first and then above this last wick high from this inverted doji on the weekly. But, Bitcoin's not far away from it. It's a little more than $1,000 currently from that weekly pivot. So keep that in mind as we go forward. It's still pressure down on the weekly. And if it does lose the basis band here at, around 28.7, the weekly would be pointing towards an area of interest at the lower first, which is right there, of course, at that daily level at that 27,250 or so. It's coming in slightly lower than that currently, but we have supports in that area and directly below. When looking at what did we have close? We had the 2-week also closed. Now the 2-week has lost the upper first standard deviation of the Bollinger Bands here. That's coming in at 29,675. Basically was tested in today's price action for the daily. And realistically, losing the upper first, if it is not regained in the next 2-week candle, would paint the picture that wherever it updates to is going to kind of cap price action. I'm not necessarily looking for things to come back down to the basis band at around 25,200. which is just above that wick low at 24.75, 24.750 even. But if it, a good indication on the 2-week is above the wick high of the last 2-week candle at 30,222, which we pointed out on the daily, and the wick low here at 28,477, right at that daily support area. Whichever way things are going to most likely proceed in the direction of any kind of a closure above, we'd be looking up, and below we'd be looking down towards the areas of support in order. There is 27.5 at this bottom side order block candle, and then we've got the top side of another order block candle right there at 27.122, and then you take the close opens there at around 26.3, and then that basis. So I'm not getting too much off of this with this doji being printed. Trade above it, probably going to go up and test higher. Trade below it, probably going to go down and test lower. I'm not looking for things to necessarily fall apart. I know many are, especially when looking at the 2-week Stochh, but the pivot is at 28,215 currently and still pointed up. We can see that the 2-week Bollinger Bands with percentile, so BBWP, is still headed down. So not necessarily looking for a massive move just yet. I would come back to it in 2 weeks and see what we're looking at, as we will likely see some volatility in between. 3-week is pointed down currently. That's going to close with this week's candle. It is not a confirmed cross to the downside. If we do see closures by the end of the week under 29,861, then basically $30,000, then I would be looking for this to complete its cross down. Seeing bifurcation between the 2-week, 3-week is not abnormal. 4 weeks still headed up, and we did just get a new closure, or close open, I should say. And this is suggesting that if it is going to pull back, a likely area to look is going to be around that 26,150 area we just pointed out a moment ago. And for continuation to the upside, of course, breaking above the 31.8 wick high here would be the upper first standard deviation, coming in at roughly 33,200 or so. Not really getting too much off of that that's going to be relevant right now. We'll see most of these moves start to present themselves on the daily here. So expansion above the upper second or below the lower second. And one of the big things that I will point out is you often see initial reversals off of these areas, like what we saw over here on the move to the upper second, upper third. Rejection, come right back down, base on the lower first. I love this setup. These are some of my favorite setups when using bands. Now, this does mean that this needs to set a low off of the lower first, lower second area. And why would I be taking the lower second? I thought lower second is going to be continuation or reversal, right? Well, the reason why I'd be looking at this area as safe is if we did see a reversal off of this area, it's off of a zone of support where Bitcoin has had many chances to break down. So if we did see it continue down to around that 29K or just under without closing below that wick low and testing further down into the lower third, then I would be looking for a possible reversal setup there. Currently, the reversal setup is trying to paint itself off the lower first, although we can see there's a big old doji here in today's candle. So we'll have to watch this coming into close. If it can maintain that lower first, today, tomorrow, into Wednesday, so on and so forth, and start closing back above the basis, and in particular, a closure back above, what is this open at, 29,400 to 29,500 or so. And I would be looking at this as an active setup. Doesn't mean it's going to be a winning setup, but an active setup to go and try that 29.8 to the wicks here around this close open at $30,000 at minimum, and possibly hit that weekly at 30,300. At the moment, I've gotten mine trades in for the day, and now it's waiting to see what happens. Got a nice long in off of the move off the lower first, hit basically hit the primary targets. I did have to manually take profit because it didn't quite hit 29.7 on my exchange. Some exchanges it actually did, but here on spot it did not. Um, and now I'm positioned in a short scalp. So just kind of taking and repositioning in the tighter range. Um, you know, I don't really have like a big banger of a trade or swing trade that I'm ready to put on yet. So it's just scalping with price action right now. Not financial advice, of course. Now, I did give these targets and I always give these targets for what I am interested in the Bitcoin in 60 seconds videos. You can find them in the shorts tab on Landy's Crypto Corner or at LandyCC. That's LANDYSCC if you are on YouTube. And, you know, those, when I talk to you guys about those targets, I'm telling you basically kind of where I'm interested personally in trading, and generally where our support and resistance areas are in relation to horizontal support and resistance and Bollinger Band volatility support and resistance. So I really do trade these areas that I talk about. So when I say target hit, it's primarily because, I trade this as well on a day-to-day basis. So I do hope that you guys are finding those videos helpful. And, if you do have questions about that kind of methodology, please put them in the comments here and I'll try to answer them today. Let's see what the 12-hour setup's looking like. So 12 hours doing much the same thing. A little bit wider range on the 12-hour, did hit the lower first and moved up to just above the upper first standard deviation here and did not make it to that upper second. What is the momentum pivot here? Momentum pivot's going to be 29,620. And, if Bitcoin can close back above this previous open, which was at 29,275, we might start to see that slow down or that pivot number get a little bit closer as close over close is kind of going sideways. If it did in particular close above 29,275 by end of day, because this is the 12-hour. Volatility is lining up as Bitcoin is right there, smack dab at the middle of the Bollinger Bands. Whenever we do see this cross, we're probably looking at a Monday initial cross, Monday closure into Tuesday rather, and then a Tuesday into Wednesday confirmation. So I would keep an eye on the 12-hour. It might be an early indication of expansion, not direction, but expansion, painting itself onto the 12-hour chart that will most likely start to give us hints on the daily as well. Looking at the 8-hour, we've got momentum pointed to the upside. So that pivot's going to be 29,200. So above there, 8 hours headed up. 6-hour probably headed up. Oh, it is headed up. I thought it was headed down for some reason. It is not. It is headed up above 29,262. And we've got the 4-hour. Maybe that's what I was looking at. Yeah, it is currently turned down on this candle. And that is around 29,300. So below 29,300, probably going to see continuation back down to the lows at around the current low side at around that 28 to 28.8 to 29K area. Maybe even just swing around the lows at 29,100. We'll see what happens. But 4-hour does have an initial cross that it's painting to the downside here. And we can see that coming off very tight compression, just kind of running both sides, taking out shorts to the top side, longs to the bottom side, hitting all those stops, grabbing liquidity, and then we'll see what the real move holds here. So below the lower second on the 4-hour is going to also be around that 29.3. It's at 29,275, which is the current low side of the last 12-hour that I was just speaking about. And hasn't really done much. I mean, it kind of rejected right around the candle highs here at 29,562 on a close. What was the high here? Did it break it? 29,566. So what was the open there? Let me check again. 29,562. So it did break it on a close, but being below this last wick low at around 29,700, around that upper second standard deviation of the daily. Not much happening for further upside. Trapped in this smaller consolidation range, trying to turn things around. But this is a pretty gnarly rejection here. If it did close like this, especially back below about 29,288, this would be a bearish engulfing candle. Probably looking at things running the current low side structure, and then we can start targeting the low side structure of this particular wider range that things are in, with that even down to that low at that 28,477, 28.5 area. So keep an eye on it. Realistically, this last wick low is what you would need to watch, as it lines up with this prior low before a nice bounce, and that prior low is coming in at $29,074. So wick low came in at $29,072. So it did swing the close open over here. Below there, we're looking right back to the lows, 28,426, possibly more down to 28K, so on and so forth. And then back above the current highs that were just put in, and this spike high right here at 29,700, there's a little bit of an order block candle right here before the move down to the lows after a failed bounce there. You can see that it's been rejected there on a close. There was an attempt to regain it, but did not get above the highs here at $30,000 on a close. $30,088, in fact, so a little bit above $30,000, and then heads back down. So pretty neutral setup right now on a Monday. Nice little scalpy scalps going on some of the lower term time frames, but not much after that. So let's go ahead and look at volatility as it relates to the medium term below the weekly here. So let's go ahead and take a look at this 2-day. We can see that the 2-day is currently settling in around that lower first after tapping on the lower second here. So lower second is positioned right at the lows again at around 28.5. Lower third is down here in the 27. That's at $28,000, 27,900. So right there at the weekly. And, this would imply that breaking below the lower first at 29,143, I would be looking right back to the lows at the lower second at around that 28.45. So we have confluence there. Basis is right at 29,760. Above there, we're basically right at that 29.8. Then we start targeting up to the highs there at 30,000 to 30,300 or so, where the upper first is coming in. And that is actually a little bit above the weekly resistance there at 30,375. So, pretty easy to identify. The bias here being below the basis is not bullish, but if it does recover it, then we start seeing more bullish signs emerging. The pivot here on the 2-day is an interesting one, as it is at 28,800, which is that wick low on the daily prior to the move down to 28,425. Now this will remain up above that 28,834. I do suspect that that's going to update later today to somewhere around the $29,000 region. And more importantly, we can see that volatility very, very low. Now we've double bottomed on volatility on a 2-day time frame, which to me means that there's probably a bigger move that's going to begin showing itself very, very soon. It's probably got another closure or two before it was to confirm. But the last one, even this little volatility expansion, was this move to the downside. And, from the high at 31.8 to the low at 28.5, we've got quite a bit of room to play in for trades. So, I mean, we're really looking for volatility upticks to assist us in actually getting positioned and making some money in this market without having to scalp the very low time frames. And in this case, we were looking at from high to low there, it's a 10% range, and a nice bit of volatility uptick, and stoke fully resetting right around supports. So 2 days giving us, the bias that things could test down again further. But if it's in and around that that lower second standard deviation, lower third standard deviation around those supports, it could very easily reverse and head right back onto the upside. So just be aware of that on any kind of violent pullbacks initially. The 3-day hanging right on to that lower first standard deviation here, which is now coming in at 29,200. Picture perfect when it comes to band setup. We've been talking about this on the 3-day, this compression, really the etchings of it showing itself here on the 3-day BBWP volatility chart, and then expansion likely to start very, very soon. And of course, we can derive that expansion, starting with the daily and the 2-day to get our edge. Basis is now coming in at 29,840, so closing above there would imply moves up to around that 30,000 to 30,300 area at the weekly. And the upper first is sitting right over top at 30,400. So that would be where those wick highs are coming in from the rejection off that weekly closing structure, which is, I believe, confluent with the 3-day closing structure. It is 30,393. So basically 30,400 at that upper first. If it could break back in there, then we walk it up to the deeper $30,000 area, and then the upper seconds right there at around 31.1. So 31 to 31.1. Closures above there imply we're going to head for the wick highs and most likely higher to the deeper $31,000 area there at 31.8, just above the upper third. We'd see expansion really start to get rolling if we did see closures above the upper second. And to the downside here, lower second is at 28,560, and closures below there and indicate, at least for the 3-day, that 27.7's in the cards at minimum. That is below the lower third. Beware of possible reversals off of those areas, as they are big areas when it comes to volatility and support resistance. So, there are a lot of confluent areas of support and resistance with the bands right now. 5-day setup. This just opened with the weekly basis band not doing much, still around 28.6 in this case. Upper first is there at 30,260, so basically 30,300. Above there, we're looking to the upper second at around 31.8 to 31.9, almost $32,000. Likely, if we did see that close above the upper first here at around that 30,300, especially on the weekly, take out the weekly and the upper first on a closing basis for the 5-day, would paint the picture that 31.8 to 32.4, that daily overhead resistance above that big 31.8 area, would be the most logical play for further upside. To the downside, drop in the basis at that 28.6. Closures below there on the 5-day. If they didn't bounce off of the 28K, maybe wick down a little bit deeper than 28, and then get bought back up, well, we would be targeting the lower first area, and currently that's coming in at 26,969. Nice. So 27K. If that area did break down, we've got a bit of a range still here on the 5-day, with the lower second coming in right there at 25,300 or so, still right around this low side structure where the close open was coming in at just around 25K or so. So this is this is painting the picture to me that not only is there a big move coming, but there's probably a big move within a range, which is likely to result in initial fake outs on the medium term timeframes below the weekly before a much larger move on the macro scale gets rolling. So, an ETF approval would definitely get things kicked off to the upside, especially with compression, um, and volatility really painting the picture that this move, whatever the next move is going to be very, very significant across just about all of these time frames. So head on a swivel above the basis on the 5-day is, it's bullish. It's not bearish. If it does lose it, starts to turn, bearish shorter term, but, it's not until things would get below the lower second and start closing and accelerating to the downside here that I'd be looking much further down. Weekly, obviously we've covered this, but it's the same thing. Above the basis still favors the bulls. It's set up for a range right now, so it could still spike, upper second, lower second before a real move gets rolling, and that would still, that'd be a big volatile move on the daily, 2-day, 3-day, but still within a wider weekly range. And I wouldn't mind that, actually, if it just bounced between the lower and upper second standard deviations. But it's almost ready. I think it's almost ready, at least from the daily perspective. Let's go ahead and check out traditional markets. Dow still above, well, that's the weekly. Let's look at the daily. Still above that upper first on the weekly. Let's go ahead and turn on the levels here from JRTA. So we have the weekly levels on the right here and the daily Bollinger Bands and this big overhead resistance. Now, a lot is being made of Mr. Burry shorting to the tune of about over $1 billion, QQQ and SPY. It's whatever. Remember, he was calling for much further down when markets were on the lows. So, you can take that with a grain of salt. Probably a good position either way, but we'll see. Bouncing off that lower first on the daily, finding initial resistance at the basis band at 35,300 or so. If it can take out that upper first, and especially this wick high right in that overhead resistance at around 35,578, this is probably going to blast off because that would also be right around the upper second standard deviation of the weekly, which would kick off expansion again on the weekly. We'll look at that in just a second, but it's also got very low BBWP. So about neutral now. Dow is setting up for a big move on the daily, just like many cryptos are setting up for a big move on the daily, 2-day, 3-day, so on and so forth. Dow is also setting up for a big move. This is a consolidation right underneath resistance. So at minimum, I do think that even if it was to fall apart down to some of these deeper targets down here, these highs, in and around 34.5 or so, I would favor another dip back into that overhead resistance, to be quite honest. I might be completely wrong. But when looking at, structurally where things are falling on the weekly, yeah, I mean, upper first right there, in that area, in that vicinity, at least at 34, almost 9. So I would almost favor where the upper first is coming in over everything else. And that is coming in at a weekly high. So 34.8, 34.9. It could pull all the way back there and still be fine. I mean, hell, this could pull all the way back to the basis and it's still fine. Big move for Dow. Likely wouldn't be very kind to crypto either, but that is, the setup is not doom and gloom just yet. It could become that way if it lost the basis on the weekly, but it really doesn't really doesn't have much of an effect until it takes out this last low, which is around the lower second standard deviation, which is all the way down at 32,740. If that were to happen, then we're looking at significant expansion to the downside. But you know, we're looking at most likely at minimum. I'm starting to see the etchings of a daily test back to the upside. Now, does momentum agree? 35,425 for stock momentum, and trading at 35,240. So it's worth watching this setup develop over the next few days. This would be, you know, below the lower second is right around that upper first at that 34,800 area, which is right around that weekly high structure over here. I would be looking, if things did just kind of fall right through, I'd be looking to see if it possibly gets a reversal set up there. Closes below it, dips down below, and then regains the lower second, lower first, then come back to it. Otherwise, if it just hangs out and goes sideways even, I would be looking for this to give another attempt up at that overhead resistance. Now, when looking at NASDAQ is headed back to a support area. It is trying to paint a reversal structure right here off the lower second. Not abnormal at all, right around prior resistance that has been flipped to support over here on this last really major low above it. Yes, it is a downtrending structure. Back above the lower first here at 15,200. And I would be looking for it to, at minimum, trade up to around 15,300 to 15,366 at that wick high, possibly around the basis and the upper first on the weekly here, which is coming in all around that same area. Basis, of course, is above it right now at 15,442, which is, you know, significantly above that wick high. I don't see NASDAQ making it back there today, so I suspect this is going to be around that wick high and the upper first on the weekly. So I would say around 15,350 or so. If it can regain that lower first at 15,200, that'd be my next major area to keep an eye on. If it can get above there, then we start raising our targets to this gap over here and this low. So the low is coming in at where the basis kind of currently is coming into this zone at around 15,425 to the open here at 15,561, and there's that wick up there around 15,636. So that's kind of the next big area, would be first targeting this low around the 15,400 region if it did recover that, and then we start looking into the gap area around the upper first as the next major target at 560 to 15,700, basically. A little bit of a spread there, but enough movement, I believe, with volatility expansion and a possible reversal setup off the doji from Friday. You know, we'll see how things possibly continue here. Now, logical rejection zones for trend would be the lower first to the basis and upper first. So lower first, strong trend. If it does reject there and then start closing back below the current lows and the lower second, that would bring it right down into this support area at around that 14,700 to 14,900. If it did regain the lower first, the basis, the next bear area that they want to hold on to. And in my opinion, the upper first is kind of it for the bears. That's their last stand, in my opinion. They're around that 15,685 to 15,700. If they couldn't hold that as resistance to maintain the downtrend, it's likely this most recent high up here, which is a lower high at 15,800, gets taken out on a close. That remains to be seen, of course, but that is what the bands are telling me at the moment. Weekly basis band has moved up to that 14,430 or so. So we do have a bit of a zone where we saw the support come in at around that 14,700 area. to that basis now at 14,430. That's kind of, yeah, it's a little dicey. There is a low below there at 14,160. I would expect that if things were to hold this week above here, basis starts working its way up into this, this resistance reclaim as support at around that 14, 500 to 700 area initially, and then probably head right up into that low side area of the support resistance area. So back above 15,350 at the upper first, I'd be looking for it to run its highs and possibly higher up to probably around 16,300 or so, which is basically the highs. We've already seen a low reclaim, so a pullback from the low reclaim, not abnormal at all. It's currently sitting around this high side support and this low side structure, which it has not come back to tag except for the way up. So very, very interesting setup we got going here that does heavily favor the bulls currently. So we'll have to come back to it if that does start to shift. And the weekly Stoke momentum is there at 15,750, which is just below that lower high on the daily. So if we saw that area reclaimed, which, is in the cards, if the bulls can push through and put a low in today, it's at least available to them in those upside areas. If it can make up some ground, 15,100 is going to be the pivot on the daily. And then if we do see that hold up, we see this bounce off the lower second, regain that lower first, and basis especially, look out above, especially coming into the Friday closure this week. Of course, we'll have a live stream then as well. When looking at SPY reversing off the lower second, just like NASDAQ here. It is already in its, in the support resistance area that I marked. So, if this holds up and it does break out back above, in this case, 446, 447 region, I would say 448, today's wick high. Above there would be 448. I'd be looking for this to run up to around the basis at 450 to 452. If it can regain 453 here at this overhead resistance that it rejected from, I'd be looking for it to head right back to its current highs. That would also look really good for this particular support resistance area to be, seen as a good flip to solid support. It doesn't mean that things don't just run the highs and then fall apart, but at least for this current move, would look okay. But I'd be looking right back to the current highs at around 460. If it does lose the lower second, it's right here at these highs. We were pointing this out on Friday. This was the expected area to find SPY in. The next big area would be 442 to 443, and then we're looking at like 437 to 440 at this low. Below there, it's going to be right back to the bottom side of this support resistance area at 431 to 430. That is where the weekly basis has now updated to as well. You can see initially, after losing the upper first, SPY is rejecting that area, which is also the lower first area on the daily, around that 446 to 448 region, we can call it. So it is worth watching. We do have a pivot on Stoke, just like NASDAQ in this case, right? Let's just confirm that was 15,101. And here we've got 447.18. So basically right now, it's not looking as though it's going to, it's looking as though it's going to fail that. If it can't push through and close back above 447.18. We're likely to see it. It is a weak signal right now. It's a building signal, so this is not a given that this would even confirm. What is the weekly pivot here? Weekly pivot's 455, so basically the current highs, or in and around the current highs. And the current high was 459. So yeah, basically on a close, it was 456.92. It's just below that closing high, and the open was coming in at 457. So back above the highs, this would keep close over close momentum pointed back up on the weekly. So interesting setups here on the daily versus the weekly. I do think this the next couple of days coming into Wednesday are going to be pivotal, and well, with all the pivots for traditional markets. Let's go ahead and look at Dixie currency and bonds. We'll go to Dixie. There we go. We finally hit our target at the upper second on the daily and upper first on the weekly. So if it can push above here, of course, this would be a closure above this structure. So the next logical structure is the one that it just hit around 103.39. On a close open, we got to 103.45. So 5 cents short of my 103.50. I do think that it's going to try up here for the 103.57 to 60 area. If it can break out from there, then we're looking somewhere around the highs here, above the upper first on the weekly, in the 104 to 104.50 area. Yeah, yep, 104 to 104.50 area. So how much more does it have to go? Well, pivots at 102.70. Trade at 103.14. That is going to catch up to it pretty quick, but it's a 2-day that's worth keeping an eye on here this week, as it is pivoted around 101.80. It's chasing hard, but closures above the upper first on the 2-day at 103. Then we're targeting that overhead resistance here at the wicks at around that 103.60. And this is a pretty big area. It was rejected quite a few times, and then impulse through, acted as resistance, deviation, act as resistance a couple more times. So next big area on the 2-day would be that upper second around 104. So it's 104.01, and that is coming in right around that high, which is on a close, I believe is a little bit lower than the daily. It is 104.30. Where it is around 104.50 on the daily on the close. And wicks, I should say. Is it the wicks or the close? Let's double check. It would be an open. And the open was, nope, it's the same as the 2-day. 104.30. The wick here is 104.50. It actually got up to 104.69. Nice, that's right. So that would be the daily upper third area. I do think that things would start to pull back from there, at least initially on first pass. 2-day looks as though it wants to try, but this would be the logical swing fail area. So it could even swing above into that upper second and get a deviation and still be bearish. So something to keep an eye on. As it relates to the weekly, though, it's the weekly upper first. This would also be the weekly upper second up here around these highs at that 104.39. It's painting possibilities, but it's still a downtrend. So until we see that wick high taken out on a close on the weekly at 104.69, nice. Then that would be above the upper second. Then we're looking to the next high area, and the 105 to 105.25 region, and possibly even up there to the deeper 105 area, just under 106. And it would still actually be in a bearish structure, but it would be a trend break at the very least. But yeah, this would be a deviation of the lows, and then it could try to reverse its structure and head back up. 150, so $100.50 or so would turn this back to the upside, or turn it down on the weekly. Sorry, this is got a bit of a meme trendline regression that it's bouncing off of, but it could be wedging itself in on both sides as well. So keep that in mind. And then we can actually get a pretty good idea of the breakout here above or below these trendline regression areas, because they are measuring close over close momentum. Breaks down from that trend line, likely seeing it reverse on the daily and lower time frames. That could lead into the weekly, or would already be leading into the weekly in that case. And then break out above this upper trend line, likely begets further upside along with the trend break. So worth keeping an eye on. That will have a pretty big effect on traditional markets and crypto markets. So let's go ahead and look at gold. All right, gold on the weekly. We'll start with the weekly. We'll go to the daily here. 1920 to turn it back to the upside here. It is currently crossed down initially on the weekly. It is around that lower second. What we want to see is, what we want to see, I don't know, who's we? What you do want to see if you are bullish on this is a reversal from this area. And, it's not in any critical zones just yet for momentum. There's possibly even a little bit of a trendline regression meme pattern here as well. Is that 100% accurate? No. I mean, it's kind of lost it and then tried to regain it. We do see Bollinger Bands twisting to the downside, so that does mean that the overhead band levels are going to be your primary resistance levels. Upper first, coming in just above this last lower high on the weekly, which is coming in at 1987.42. And in order to turn this structure around, it's got to hold on to the wick low here, which is right at the lower second standard deviation at 1893. If it does lose that, we're looking left. That would be, probably a drawdown to the next area here, which is by the lower third at around 1864 to the low side structure, or the most recent low side structure of the move up, which is down in the $1,800 area, 1810 to 1812. That's a pretty big move down in gold, but it's in a prime area to try for a reversal here. Let's look at how likely that might be on the daily. It's just riding that lower second standard deviation down currently. And it's right around an order block over here on the daily. Just traded into it at around 1903. That's also this low over here prior to putting in a nice high that led down to the 1809 to 1812 region. So this is a pivotal point. I can't talk today. I'm sorry, guys. For gold right here. It's going to have to try to mount an assault back to the upside shortly, or it's not going to be looking good for gold bugs. Probably doesn't bode well for Bitcoin and cryptos as well either. 1919 would turn this back to the upside. Trading a little bit more than $10 under. By close of day, if it can regain that area, I would be looking further to the upside. We do see that volatility picked up on the move down. It is lining up for a little bit of mean reversion, but mean reversion can come in two ways. It can hang on the lows and the basis catch up, or it can mean revert and price rises back to the basis. And it's also not a given that that's going to happen, as the BBWP is still above the moving average. You want to see it back below and the moving average turn down with it. And you can still see continuation as the bands tick down. If it's going to ride that lower second, swing this low down here, you'd see the lower second still continue down. Price can still continue down when you see mean reversion kick off on the BBWP indicator. It's just telling you that the Bollinger Bands are not expanding any further in terms of their width, their percentage width, but instead now we have the basis headed down. If it is riding that lower second down to this low here at 1893, I would look for it to swing that area and then try to recover. This is all going to be overhead resistance, though. Like I said, lower first regain at around that 1923. Of course, would turn momentum back to the upside, but not much is happening below the basis band at around 1946 and this last high. So those are starting to line up with each other. This is also the weekly basis band right overhead at 1960. It would need to recover that. And then you can see on the daily here, the upper first and upper second are right in that zone. So above the basis on the weekly, the upper first is coming in at 1968. That kind of gives it room all the way up to the upper second, where the highs are coming in around the weekly upper first, just below about $8 to $10 below 2K. So we're looking at 1990, which would be just above this high. So even on a bounce, bulls got to be careful if you are if you're in this. Even on a nice strong bounce, bearish below that 1990 until further notice. If it did close above there, regain the upper first on the weekly and upper second on the daily, then we're looking at a reclaim of these lows over here at around 1980 to 1990. And then we're looking at, high side structures above there at around the low 2K region, and just kind of take it in order. 2020, and then we've got a little bit of an order block over here at 2015 as well. So that would be something to be aware of on any kind of strong moves back to the top side here. It is possible that gold tries to set up a reversal right from here. It's getting very close. Does the 12-hour show us anything different? Yeah, 1907. So trading right there currently. It's only about 25 cents above, if that. I'd be aware of this continuing its downtrend, but if it's going to bounce, this is going to be the area that it's going to try in, or around the prior low, just under 1900. So that's going to be gold. Is it worth me looking at bonds today? Yeah, I mean, they're moving up. So liquidity is being grabbed right now. Yield is moving up. So this is a little bit of a sell-off, leading to yield moving up. We'll come back to this and we'll revisit bonds on Wednesday. So let me go cut back over to Bitcoin, see what it's doing. And not much has changed. So got that daily basis band area that it's just hanging out in. All right, that is going to do it for the recorded section of this. Thank you for hanging out with me for the recording, guys. And let's go ahead and see if anybody's got any questions here in chat. Let's see. Hi, Sam. Hi, Baba. Jedi, hello. Spin, take care. All right, no questions over here. Just got back your Forex account. See what you expect to play out while you're away. Okay, you're talking about gold. Okay, Jedi. All right. Well, that's going to do it then if there's no questions, because I see the other side, you guys are having some technical difficulties in the other stream. Yeah, all right. So then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to end up wrapping it up today if there's no questions from YouTube over there. You guys have any questions? I'll give you a moment. I'll turn the music back on here, and we'll see if once you guys catch up, if you do have any questions, you go ahead and let me know. And yeah, I know Jimmy's working on it. So if you guys do have questions, I'll give it a minute. Yeah. We'll give it a minute. And then I'll probably end up bouncing out if there is no questions. Mm-hmm. Okay. So there was one question. You want me to look at a cryptocurrency? All right, we can look at Litecoin. Litecoin is actually, we haven't looked at this in a while, but that big area that we identified a while ago at this low over here from the move up is holding for now at that 81.77 to 83 bucks. We've got you know, the possibility that it could try to bounce from here. It's got to close back above 83 and take out this open at around 83.5 to go test to see if it can even try to put in this low and reverse at around 85.40. That's really where I'd be looking for things to try and run up to the basis band at 86.5. Give the that's the basis band on the daily, and then give the basis band on the weekly a tap at just under $90 at around 89.50 or so. If it can recover that area, I'd be looking to the upper first at around 90.5 to 91 bucks or so, and come back to it. It's gotta start changing structure on the daily, and currently it's just a downtrending structure right at support. So if it does lose this support, it's going to be continuation down to the lower second, in my opinion, in the upper $70 region at around 77 bucks, right around the high side of this prior low structure before the big move up. And below there, it's right back to this low at 73 and 70 bucks basically. Momentum 82.80, so basically 83 bucks on the daily. 12 hours probably down, yep, 84.21. 8 hour we're looking at 81.83, still headed down. 6 hours trying to turn 81.91. So wait, what's the trend at? 82. So the 6 and 8 hour have a chance by end of day today. The 4 hour low 82.03 is going to confirm this cross down. Not really doing much for me though. And again, a little bit of a trend line regression, but below where it's currently trading, it's going to lose the support zone. And that would also be below, basically below the lower second, which it's bouncing from right now on the 4 hour. Got a little bit of expansion down, came back down, retest after rejection at the basis, right in the support resistance area. So if it can hold in this area and recover out of here from the 4 hour, take out that last high at 83.43, so 83.50 to 84 bucks, and then it can go test 85 to 85.5 below this last wick low at 81.08. Keep an eye on this wick low over here at around 80 bucks, just north of, oh no, I'm sorry, it's 79.20. Lose that, it's going to be a quick move down. This would also be the weekly lower for standard deviation around that 81.25. So really want to see it hold that if you're going to be bullish on this area, potentially turning around. But currently not seeing much. Hourly looks like it's gonna head down, quite honestly. But the bifurcation between some of these time frames is kind of telling me that just watch the support resistance area. Hourly expansion, just kind of rejecting off the lower second and third, and then the upper second and third right inside of this area. So I'd just keep an eye on that daily. If it drops the wick low, 81 bucks, then you're looking down to 80.5, and then that 80 to 79 basically. If it can't hold that area, it's gonna head much further down over time, I think. Yes, Litecoin can be silly. I have a new. So hold on. Can I have a look at a rather new altcoin? It's favorite in your Swiss group. SDEX USDT on Mexi. It's 4 months of history. Oh, great. Yeah, I could take a look at it. I would say it's a decentralized exchange coin, right? So, okay, let's see. Is it SmartDex? This guy here? All right. You know, not a bad chart. I would say that it is kind of wedging itself into a bit of a falling channel structure just by the looks of it, and it's trying to break out on a closing basis, but you know, getting an initial rejection off the upper second here. If it can, yeah, there's no weekly data, so we're just gonna have to go off the daily. If it can hold above, it's a penny, so 1.04. Then you know, it's going to get daily continuation to the upside. It's got to hold the basis at 107.18. I don't even know. I don't even know how to say some of these numbers, but yeah, 107.18. If it can hold above here, reclaim that upper first at 111.82, then I would be looking for it to run this high again. If it does lose that lower first, it is in danger of running these lows again. But they've held up as pretty good support down just under a penny here at 99.46. Anything below that lower second, though, it's got one last chance basically. At around 95.99. If it can start closing above that 11646 at the upper second, it still needs to get above that high at 11903. And then it's clear to probably go and test the 1.22 cent region to the highs here at 1.4 cents. So almost 1.5 cents. It's high level consolidation. It's holding support really well. It's built out a nice little base on the daily, which does mean that if it loses this, it's likely lights out, as one Crown from or Crown Crypto would say. Be lights out. It's one of those types of coins that can possibly make you wife changing money. You know, maybe. I don't know what it, you know, I don't know much about their decks. SmartDex. I don't know what it is. I don't know how often it's used. But being listed on an exchange usually provides it a nice pop. And, you know, it did have an initial dump off, but got picked up. And it's been up and to the right, which is good. You know, I mean, nice little consolidation once it broke out. It tried to get above this wick high. Once it broke out above that wick high at 0.005 cents, so half a cent, a little bit more than half a cent, you know, it took off. So that would mean that below this wick low at you know, just under a penny at 9.599, it's probably going to give back a lot of what it gained. So. But this is what you do want to see. You want to see a nice base form with a new coin like this. This first pass rejection around this last high, not abnormal at all. It's by the upper second. You just don't want to see expansion below the lower second and this low. That's where it's going to give up most of its gains. Above the upper second, this last high here, which is also this high over here from the 28th of July, and it's and you target the highs on a closing basis to the wicks and beyond. That's really all I got for you though on this. I mean, we can look at like the 4-hour, nice move up, mean reverted. Not much to make of it. Headed down. There is a meme trend line here. As it is close over close momentum, it's almost there. That would turn at 1129. We're just gonna call it that. So, you know, that would be kind of how I take this. Looks good though. Nice reversals off the lower second, man. And quite frankly, since it's been consolidating, nice reversals off the upper second and third. I mean, giant spikes through. If you're in a short position, you're getting screwed. But this last one was a really beautiful reversal off of that upper second. Nice reversals off the lower seconds here. It's playing nicely on the 4-hour, it seems. I would still be careful though. It's probably super low liquidity. And let's look at the volume. Has the volume been consistent? Yeah, volume falling off and kind of evening out at a lower level during a consolidation, not abnormal. I would watch for giant volume spikes on the way up again. It didn't even get that much. Now you got some hodlers. So on the highs that were put in, it didn't put them in on high volume. So interesting. Don't know really much to make of it outside of that. Hope that helps. Fibs are being respected, you said. You know, for a lot of these types of coins, when they first get put on major exchanges, a lot of bot trading going on, and there's a lot of fib bots. So you're gonna probably see it hanging on to those areas. Yeah, hit the 50%. Spike the 618 off the highs here. Yeah, I mean, looks pretty clean. This does tell me that there's some algos at play here, more than just psychology. I don't imagine this has a lot of liquidity, so you kind of need bots to trade this around to get that liquidity flow or the volume flow on the exchange, so that people will come and participate in trading it. So very nice. This is actually a decent launch of a coin on an exchange, so can't hate it. I don't know what it did before it went and got listed, but you'd have to tell me, probably on their decks, if they even chart it properly. But yeah. All right, any others? If not, I'm gonna head out. It is 1 p.m. my time here, Pacific Standard Time. So I believe it's 8 UTC. So I'm sure some of you guys are getting ready to either go to bed or go out for dinner or something. And for you guys over in Jimmy did get that straightened out. Okay, we'll just have to use it on Wednesday. You don't have any questions that pertain to anything that we were talking about today, just other generalized trading questions. You know, if you guys have generalized trading questions over in the other chat, you can always ask, because it would be beneficial for guys on YouTube to hear this as well. You know, our conversations about trading. All right. Okay, looks like we don't have many more questions. Yeah. Okay, you guys are talking like wider prop shop liquidity stuff. Okay, that kind of trading. Yeah, that's not chartable stuff. But yeah, we can discuss that off stream. But yeah, if you have trading related questions that are chartable, go ahead and ask them, as it would be beneficial for those listening on YouTube that aren't in the financial services industry. Yeah. Okay. So that is going to do it for today then. You guys, I want to thank you for hanging out with me. Please like, share, comment. YouTube has started to show my shorts again, so if you guys can give me some love on those with some likes and shares or comments. Likes are probably the thing that are going to be the best. And then for the streams too, it turns out there's actually quite a lot of people that watch the streams after the fact. I should have the Bitcoin portion of this. We'll see if I can extract that cleanly from today's stream, and I'll have that up later for your review. Or I'll bookmark or chapter this one. Oh, I got one more. We got one more. I got to do this one for Don. All right, Bitcoin dominance for Don. I haven't seen you in a little while, Don. I hope you're doing okay. I think the other Don is somewhere here as well, where he was. All right, whoa. Well, that's a drop. Yeah, so let's look at this here. Interesting. Had a nice little pullback on dominance. Gap down, no less, right to the lows. All right, so let's go ahead and look at USDT dropped as well. USDC dropped as well. This is, money moving to another player. And of course, money moving out of Bitcoin today on the move up. But the open in dominance dropping like this, and seeing a drop in USDT and USDC dominance as well, isn't just total market cap, which has gone up. So this tells me that there is another player in the game that is sucking liquidity out and moving it over to a system of some sort. Now we do know PYUSD is launched, and they do need liquidity. They also need coins for some of that liquidity, so they don't have to go to exchange and buy as well, and that would be PayPal. Not sure what to make of this, but it is around the lows. I would expect, it's playing within a range. Momentum headed down below 50.54%. Currently trading quite a bit under that at 49.67%. Not really too much for me to make of this. This could also be pre-positioned for some other things that are going on in traditional markets and some of the players that want to get involved in crypto as well. It's rare that we see that big of a gap down on the daily, or gap up for that matter, unless that's an anomaly across the board. But we're seeing it in USDT, USDC, and Bitcoin dominance, while total market cap is growing. I think that's interesting. Total market cap might make a low here as well by end of today. Even if it closes as a bear candle, this would solidify it as a low. We're looking at 1.141 trillion, trading at 1.148. So that would be continued upside from the momentum perspective, right into that upper second standard deviation. So I'm glad you brought that up, Don. Yeah, they were all, yeah, that's rare. That's super rare. He says, Don says there's 3 gaps, 2021, 2020, and 2017. It's happened 3 times before. And I want to say that the last time that we saw this happen on the daily like this in 2021 was the big one. Where is that gap? I do remember there being a gap in dominance on the way down. Yeah, here it is. This was in May of 21. We've got one. So I knew there was one in the accumulation structure. There was a little bit in 2020 in May. And this was preceding, well, this is preceding a pretty big move. Now, Bitcoin has taken up most of the market cap here. What to make of this would generally be that there's a bigger player has entered the game. And I wouldn't put them in a negative position, but a bigger player has positioned themselves. And when you see USDT, USDC, so your stables drop at the same time Bitcoin dominance drops, that's liquidity outflowing from the market in general. Now you could say, okay, well, that just means that it's going into altcoins. Well, yes and no. When you pull liquidity, you can see the same thing happen, and we can check that or verify that as a sanity check by looking at total 2, which did gap up. Total 3 did gap up aggressively as well. So it could be pulling out to a different system using Bitcoin as leverage as well. And when you re-leverage that and buy an alt, then you're going to see this kind of a scenario as well. And then also leveraging USDC and USDT, it technically pulls it out of their market cap. So we've got a new player in the game with big money that is doing something. And could be one of the traditional players, or a big market player, like an exchange or something. So we'll have to see what kind of news results from that, but it does change the dominant structure on the daily for Bitcoin. We'll have to check in it on Wednesday. I want to see if anything gets recovered. Yeah. And I want to see, actually, you know what? Now that you brought that up, dominance dropping when price goes up is, profit taking typically, and move out to other cryptos in the space, whatever that might be, stables, cryptos. Bitcoin dominance. Yeah, we're seeing the drop across the board. Wait. So that would be, let's look at the 4-hour. Big drop down when Bitcoin rejected. What to make of that? Well, it's happening with Bitcoin, USDT, and USDC. So I'll have to give it some thought and maybe check around. There's probably some on-chain guys doing that already. Yes, Cheryl, hello. A little late today, but that's okay. Of course, you can always go back and watch the DVR. You can just scrub back. Or when the stream ends, of course, it will just start again when you play it. Yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on Bitcoin dominance. I'm glad you brought that up, Don. Thank you. Made some nice soul trades using the landing bands. Didn't do that. Awesome. That's excellent, Cheryl. Well, I'm glad that you're having success trading. At the others dominance, yeah. So it's kind of weird because others used to, yeah, just way through the roof. Others, are. This could be, like an Elon. Elon selling stables and Bitcoin into Doge so he can get yeah, it's plus 20%. So when you look at others, this is a big move up. The last moves that we've seen that were like this were, well, We're looking at August was the move down. This is probably the biggest move up we've seen in a long time. Yeah. This reminds me of when new stables started to come on the market. So that's what it reminds me of. This could be a player like an Elon Musk too, who has Bitcoin stables and other things, preparing for a launch of something. So could you imagine? That's just speculation. It's pure speculation. There's probably someone right now that has all of this information that is like, I know what's going on. This guy's an idiot. And so be it. But in this in this case, we're seeing shit coins being boosted. Shiba Inu. So SHIB's back in the cycle here. I doubt people are moving Bitcoin for SHIB, although that would be hilarious. Bitcoin and stables flowing into SHIB. Probably all of this is probably being charted with somebody on chain, as it relates to all of our analysis just a few moments ago. Excuse me. As it relates to our analysis a little while ago, doesn't change anything. But the dominance drop with the price drop and dominance dropping across the board for majors, that being the stables and Bitcoin. Pretty interesting. Good find, as I was not paying attention to that. Ethereum also had a big move down. Yeah, so interesting, to say the least. So yeah, this is prep for something. Who knows? Maybe it's for a stable, or a launch of a coin. And we know somebody's been hinting at that for a long time. So that will definitely be interesting to. It will rather definitely be interesting to watch the next few days to see what the on-chain guys dig up and how the market responds. As it stands right now, still not much happening. Bitcoin's neutral at the basis band. Gotta love it. Yeah, well, HBAR's been in the news lately for new partnerships. It could be that they had something major going on. Yeah, that's a nice move. Taking out this last high at 6.4 to almost 6.5 cents. Yeah, I mean, it's a widely used crypto, so it's actually utilized. Much like, you've got Hedera and you've got Link as like the big players in the corporate game. So lots of partnerships. It's a nice move off of these areas. Hedera's still got a lot of ground to make up, because when you look at the totality of this chart, it looks awful. Could it, eventually break out to brand new highs? We might be seeing that now from the weekly. Excuse me. Rejected the upper second standard deviation first pass. That's normal. Carving out a bit of a low here. It is above the prior low at 6.18 cents. It's basically 6.2 cents. Quite honestly, it probably looks good to, if it doesn't reject past this last week's wick high at 6.38 cents, and close under there, it's probably looking for, around 7.2 to 7.3 cents, maybe even higher to this high at 7.8 to 8 cents. That would be expansion on the weekly as well, and that's what H barbarians want to see, targeting this, 8.5 to 8.7 cents and 9 to 10 cent region. That'd be a pretty big low, and that would solidify. This is basically solidified as a not necessarily a macro low just yet. If we look at the monthly, I don't think. Oh no, this might solidify a macro low on the monthly. Last time this happened, by the way, macro low on the monthly was back here in January into September of 2020, September-November area of 2020, with the takeoff in January of 2021. So this could be preempting this would be a macro low. Major low, confirm this as a macro low. Where would I put that at? I'd still want to see it. Still want to see it back above. It's got to close above 6.414 cents. And I'd still want to see it above the 7.3 to 7.4 cent region. Then macro low is likely in. Probably tests around 9 to 10 cents. And then if it breaks out above that wick high, it's probably blast off time. Realistically, I mean, you got the wick low up here at 13.5 to around 19.5, almost 20 cents. Good middle ground is that upper first standard deviation coming in at 15 cents. Interesting stuff. I did hear that there was something going on. Funny enough, it was Credible Crypto was talking about it. So if you're not following him on Twitter or x.com, then you should, because he did mention that it was in a liquid zone. He was looking for it to move up, and he was right. It did. Trend is your friend, yes. So, anyway, be careful scalping really strong coins, just so you know. But if you're gonna degen it right. Sounds like you're doing it right. But yeah, right now structurally looks really good. It's strong, very strong. I thought I ended this stream already. I didn't. But I'm glad that you guys showed up, and yeah, keep an eye on dominance. I will. Says the other chat. We want to know what I find. Yes. And for those of you in chat, if you do find something interesting going on that I have not yet seen, go ahead and let me know regarding dominance. Dropping on Bitcoin, USDT, and USDC. So, all right, guys. Well, I want to thank you all. If you're scared while trading, you need to learn first. Get some trading psychologies book first. Yeah. Sometimes trial by fire works too. Yeah, Cheryl's been doing really good trading from what I've seen. She's gotten some good trades in. But yes, in fact, if you want to get into the psychology side of things, Crown over at Crown's Crypto Cave, or Eric Crown Crypto, he has a beginner series that goes over trading psychology, and then he's got an entire series on trading psychology in his playlist on YouTube, and it's free. Eventually, I will have a trading series for beginners, and I will have a psychology series, but the psychology series is not going to be for a little while. But other than that, I want to thank you all again for hanging out. You have a wonderful morning, afternoon, and evening. No matter where you are in the world, please trade safe, and of course, as always, stay safe. And I will be back later today with a Bitcoin in 60 seconds video for you. And Wednesday, I will have a live stream at the same time. I could really only fit this time frame, or this time slot, in at around 11:30 p.m. or 11:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, which is 6:30 UTC, as that's kind of works well for people overseas, people locally by me. But Wednesday will be the next one. I'll jump on the mic after about 15 minutes, give everybody a chance to get in here and hang out, say hi. Yeah. Likes, reposts on X are always helpful, and then of course videos, the likes on YouTube are the main driver of engagement, along with the comments if you ever do have a question. So if you want to help me grow, go ahead and do those things for me, and I'll keep doing the analysis for you and chatting with you, and we will all grow together. You have a wonderful one. With all of that said, Landy out.